Carl and Lou here from Brrraaains A Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for sure. And it's Freddy's Nightmares as we're doing episode 3 of season 1. This is Killer Instinct, written by Alan B. Uri and directed by Mick Garris. We should say now, because we've not seen any episodes, that it's fun to watch the show and see famous people before they were major famous or like doing smaller roles. And there's one in this. This is Laura Petty as Chris Gordon. Laura Petty, best known as Tank Girl.
For me, I've not seen Tank Girl, but I know that she's in it. But mine's Orange is the New Black.
Okay, yep.
And she's really, really good in that. So.
And other cast members, we've got Yvette Nipper as Nikki Ryan and Kane Picoy as Dave. Small cast for 2 segments. And also, similar to episode 2, It's a Miserable Life, this one suffers from a major problem. The first segment is extremely memorable.
Yeah.
The second segment is extremely forgettable.
Yeah.
So much so that before we hit record on this, we were like, shit, what actually happened in the second segment? And we're like, okay, we know this happened, but like, how does that extend into a 10-minute, 15-minute episode, a segment? And we were struggling, and even still, I'm not quite convinced it worked, and it clearly isn't that memorable. Whereas the first part is really memorable. Strange that, because Chris Gordon, which is Laura Petty's character, she's basically a competitive runner. She's in high school, in college, whatever it is. She's got a good-looking boyfriend who does love and care for her, even though her rival, Nikki, tries to steal him, but he's not that interested. He actually is committed to her and so on. But yeah, Nikki's constantly teasing Chris, because Chris just isn't quite there. The whole thing is that Chris just isn't quite there. She's good. She's a good runner, but she's not quite there. And the problem is she's under immense pressure because her mother was a champion runner. She gets pressure not just from around in family, but it's also like she's getting pressure from her coach and obviously being teased by Nikki as well because she keeps kind of coming up. It seems to be the killer instinct she's lacking, that thing that you need to get over the finish line. She'll run well, but then she'll run out of steam at the end and aspects like that. And it bothers her. I think Laura Petty's pretty good in this.
She plays it really well. Yeah, it's got kind of like youthful, obviously she's very young then. And I like the fact they did make the boyfriend a douche.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah,
you get so much in these kind of like teen relationships where he's a bit of a wandering eye kind of thing. But yeah, I like the fact that was a solid element in her life. So.
Yeah, and basically she ends up getting a magical charm that her mother owned, which seems to grant her abilities to kind of just win. Yeah. Just win, like positive things for her, negative things for others.
It must be like a curse charm then.
Well, it is, because of course it's one of those monkey's paw style things. Be careful what you wish for, because that's inevitably, it turns out, she ends up becoming a bit faster runner, and elements like that. She becomes a bit obsessed with it as well, and Nikki becomes aware of it, seeing the charm and stuff like that, and you can tell she's kind of thinking, oh, I'm going to steal that, I'm going to steal that, I'm going to steal that. I think that's what happens at the end, isn't it? That she doesn't have the charm with her, Nikki does, and then Nikki uses it to kill Laurie, basically. That's how this segment ends. Laurie Petty's the actor, Chris, and so on. But yeah, it's a fun finale, how it's done, because you got a lot of track running here, you got a lot of up close of women running and stuff like that, and there's not enough time to develop like proper relationships here. There's not enough time to develop the relationship between Nikki and Chris, other than, the rivals on the track and Nikki's a little bit of a bitch. And it's like, hey, a little bit more than that, please. You know what I mean? As well, the same goes with Dave. Because he's not a major character either, but he's in both.
Yeah.
He's not the one that will step into he's not the B character that steps into the A one. That's Nikki. Nikki will become the main character of the second segment. So basically, after Chris dies, Nikki is feels guilty, and basically gets haunted by Chris's ghost. So I will say Chris's death is fun. She breaks her neck over a hurdle, isn't it? Yes, and you do actually see a nice like shot of it and stuff like that. And afterwards, when you see her sort of haunting Nikki, she's all pale and stuff like that. And basically, it's Nikki having to run from her demon, so to speak, until eventually, of course, she gets her comeuppance too. But this is a bit of it's an early downward slide for me personally. I didn't really care for this.
No. I mean, like I say, you could have combined all that into one episode.
Yeah.
And then had something else.
Just deeper, more meaningful. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's playing, like, you kind of touched upon the whole Carrie thing, Mean Girl, stuff like that, aspects like that. So go deeper with that. Push that a little bit further. Don't just make it, right. I like the idea of Chris being, like, I like the idea of the monkey's paw aspect with the gem. I like the idea of Chris using it to become better in the track, and of course that will end up costing her. But I feel like that should be done in a different way. So like for every time she wishes upon it to do a certain thing, or be it with Dave, be it with on the track or stuff like that, it takes something from her.
Yeah.
Like a piece of her soul. Maybe she feels more empty.
Yeah.
Maybe she's, you know what I mean? Like, or it makes her angrier or stuff like that, and so on that. And so that she starts isolating people around her. There's all these stuff you could have done with it, but you need more time to do that. You don't have enough time to do that as well. But this particular first segment, more than the second, because the second is just about Nikki being driven to insanity, and that's how the episode ends. This feels nothing like a Nightmare on Elm Street.
No.
Nothing. In fact, there's almost like, other than what Nikki goes through, but that's also haunting, so to speak, there's no real dream aspect of this either. It doesn't really feel that way in the same, you know, if Freddy had popped up randomly in this, aside from the prologue and the epilogue, it would have felt really out of fucking place.
Yeah.
It feels disconnected. It feels like a Tales from the Crypt TV.
Yeah, because
episode.
it's got a darkness. It's got a dark side to it.
Well, yeah, it's got like horror, but it's not like there's no nudity, there's no over the topness in this, there's no gore. It's very, very simple. It's straightforward. It's, I want to say child-friendly horror, but it's certainly accessible horror.
Yeah.
You know, because the idea is, well, it's about, it's about trying to make a moral out of it more than anything else. And that's, I don't know. What's the moral of this one? Don't wish upon a cursed gem?
Just don't use trinkets and gems like superstitions. Like,
Believe
in yourself.
Believe in yourself. I guess that, right? Which would be fine if that was a lesson that's learned, except it's not, because Chris dies.
Yeah.
And Nikki becomes insane.
Yeah.
So nobody wins.
No.
I mean, that's fine, because I don't really want to be told. I don't really want morals being like, oh, here's a lesson learned, that kind of thing. It's unnecessary. It's a horror TV show based partially on a franchise that had reached cheesy stages at this point in 1988 through to 1990. It reached that element. But what this episode lacks, that many others would have, I always remember, is this doesn't have much fun factor.
No.
This doesn't feel that much fun.
No.
Whereas later ones, I think, really know, all right, let's have a little bit of fun. Maybe it depends on the writers, maybe it depends on directors. You know, we'll see who pops up for that as it goes. Maybe it depends on the cast. But I do, regardless, I always remember the first segment of this. And I guess because, when I think of it, I picture Laurie Petty in that headband and runner's gear.
Yeah.
I guess, but that's about all I'd take away from it.
Yeah. She did a good job acting.
There it is. That's episode 3, Killer Instinct. Got any thoughts on it? You know what to do. Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?